Hello, my name is Gary Burchfield. They also call me Gary the Carpenter. I am in the process of writing a memoir called 5 Feet 11 3/4 Deep. You'll be able to see it through our Substack page called Rock Bottom Redemptions. We also will be doing a YouTube video. Today I'm here to talk about and to tell you where I'm at. I'm in what's called the Redneck Gazebo. It's like a 1965 trailer that I turned into a gazebo for my backyard. But anyway, I'm here to talk about my addiction and my recovery, and to try to help people understand what addiction is all about, not only for the person themselves but also for the family. Everybody has different degrees of addictive behaviors. All addicts aren't addicted to everything. Everybody has their own drug of choice. My drug of choice in the end happened to be crack cocaine. I did a lot of drugs throughout my years, but once crack cocaine became into my life, that's what my drug of choice became. My memoir, starts out when I was like 8 or 9 years old. It has a lot of different aspects to it. There's drama, there's trauma, there's spiritual aspects of it, there's recovery involved in it, there's inspiration, there is going to be a lot of funny moments, a lot of crazy moments, major tragedy in my life. So I'm trying to put my book out there not only to help me but to help other people, and to tell my story. I think my story is interesting. So I've been clean and sober since December the 12th, 1992. I've been trying to quit since probably, early 80s. Once I got into Key West and I found cocaine in Key West. It was the cocaine capital of the world along with Miami. Cocaine became my drug of choice. It didn't start out as full-blown addiction. There was different degrees. It was kind of built up throughout my life. With cocaine, it was basically I was in the Navy, and I ended up becoming, I guess, what they call as a weekend warrior. You go to work during the day, you function, you eat, you do all the right things, and on the weekend, it was more of a social thing for me in the beginning. You start to party a little bit, and then and you end up partying for Friday night. Then Friday night turns into Saturday night, Saturday to Sunday, and then Monday you're back to work. Trying to recover from a pretty rough weekend. The disease of addiction is progressive. It progressively gets worse. But in the end, once you start the recovery progress, the recovery is also progression. It progressively gets better. For me, it got really bad. Everybody has their own drug of choice. Everybody has their own bottom. Not everybody that picks up a drug becomes addicted to it. Sometimes it's a combination of what you go through in life, and the stresses and the dramas and the traumas in your life. Sometimes it's just about putting that chemical into your system for a long period of time, and then your body gets used to it. And when you try to take that away, mixed in with all the emotional damage and the physical damage, it becomes harder and harder to stop. Eventually I started getting in trouble. I started getting arrested. Probably, I think the first time was, purchase of cocaine. And then, I didn't quite get into trouble at that point, at that time, but the first time I ever went to prison was for possession of cocaine. Every time I went in front of the judge, I basically said, hey, I've got a drug problem, I need help, can you please, maybe recommend drug rehab in prison. But the problem with that situation is that, prison You know, there's a long list, there's a long line, and prison is not always the fix for what you're going through. You know, a lot of times in prison I would get out before I got drug rehab, and they'd give you $100 and a bus ticket and then put you back out in the same situation that caused you to go out and drink and do drugs, you know, in the beginning. You know, I mean, the first time basically they give you probation, of course, and then in that probation they put, you know, regulations on you. Basically, they say that you have to go to meetings, you got to report to your probation officer. And going to meetings, you know, when you don't make it your choice, is kind of difficult because you don't really want to put 100% into it. You know, I'm not saying that it doesn't help you, because eventually some of the stuff you hear and some of the stuff you learn, you know, sticks with you, and then one day down the road, you know, you'll get an epiphany and you'll say, oh, that's what they were talking about. You know, there's no willpower cure to the disease of addiction. There's no, you know, you can't just, you know, snap your fingers and you stop using. Not when you're an addict. You know, so it was a progression for me. You know, and a lot of people have it's called a bottom. You know, you have to hit your bottom before you finally make a change. And some people don't even hit that bottom. Some people's bottoms is 6 feet under. And that's why my memoir and my book is called 5 feet 11 3/4 deep, because I was always a 1/4 inch away from being 6 feet under many times in my life. You'll be able to read that in the upcoming book. So, you know, I ended up going to prison 4 times, and nothing violent. It was mostly for possession of drugs, or, you know, or purchase of drugs, or selling drugs, or, you know, violation of probation, got on house arrest, violation of house arrest. I actually got sentenced to a long-term treatment facility once, and while waiting for the bed, I decided to, they sent me up to a place called Camila's house in Miami, and obviously I wasn't ready, and after about 2 days waiting for the treatment program, I took off. You know, of course, violated my probation and eventually got arrested and went back to jail. You know, my bottom was a spiritual one. You know, and you know, I finally had to make a choice. You know, what was I willing to do to keep from going back out there and living that life again? You know, and I know this is difficult for families. You know, to understand if they're not an addict, you know, and to understand what their child or what their family member is going through. There's not a lot you can do to help them. You know, I mean, pray for them, love them until they learn how to love themselves. You know, the more you try to help them, you know, like feeding them or paying their rent or whatever, you know, you're basically enabling them, and you're slowing down the process of, you know, of their bottom. You know, they're slowing down the process of the choices that they make. You know, and again, sometimes, you know, you end up losing that family member, and you know, and I've had to deal with that because I had a brother that passed away at 45. You know, and I had already been clean and sober, you know, quite a few years prior to him, you know, passing away. And you know, you're torn between, you know, helping somebody that you love and giving them that tough love, and you know, and there's a fine line to it, and I don't know where that line stops and starts. You know, I look back and I think I wish I could have helped my brother more. Maybe he'd still be alive. You know, but at the same time, you know, I had my own recovery that I had to work on and I had to fix. And, you know, he ended up passing away at 45 years old from heart disease, liver disease, all from drinking and doing drugs. I've been clean 34 years, maybe 3 or 4 months. You know, I call that day December 12, 1992, my rebirth, my birthday. You know, for me, I did hit my bottom, you know, and then when I finally let go of my willpower and gave my will to a higher power, and surrendered my will and was willing to do anything and everything to keep from living that life again, you know, things started changing for me. And all those times that I went back and forth into NA and AA, you know, it wasn't a waste of time. The problem was it wasn't my choice, you know. And when you make choices, you know, for yourself, you either choose to or you choose not to. When you choose to make those choices, you know, and you practice those words, you know, instead of saying I have to do something or I can't do something, you change the mental thinking in your mind saying either I choose to or I choose not to. And then you decide whether or not you want to deal with the consequences, because there's usually consequences when you're choosing not to. So when I finally made it the choice to do whatever it took, that's when things started changing for me. And that all that time that I put into NA and AA, it wasn't a waste of time. It was just these steps that took me to a place where, you know, it became easier for me. You know, yeah, when I first got clean and sober, I was still a wreck. I mean, if I broke my shoelaces, I'd want to cry or get high. You know, luckily I had this strong desire to finally want to get clean and sober. You know, I have a lot of friends that aren't with me today because they couldn't hit that bottom, or their bottom was, you know, 6 feet under. You know, I had, people that have been in recovery, they got clean and sober for a long period of time, and then they went out and used, and then they couldn't handle the embarrassment of it, and, you know, and they killed themselves. You know, it's hard. It's hard for an addict. It's not an easy thing. You know, it's, you know, there's a lot of emotions involved. There's a lot of shame involved. There's a lot of guilt, you know, and you have to be able to balance that physical recovery with the emotional recovery, with also, I hate to say being brainwashed, but kind of you have to reprogram your way of thinking, you know, and sometimes you fail and you make mistakes, you know. Yeah, and I know it's difficult for you as a parent to see your child out there suffering, but the hard part about it is, you know, you have a choice. You can continue their suffering by enabling them, or you can try to not enable them anymore and let them go through the process, but also you got to let them know you love them. You know, you can't sit there and attack them. You know, you can't sit there and try to tell them, you know, what to do and how to do it, because you're not going through it, and you don't see and you don't feel what they're going through. You know, I'm truly blessed to be standing here today, you know, having this conversation with you. You know, my book isn't all about recovery, but you know, I'm not here today if it wasn't for that recovery. We're going to be doing, you know, quite a few of these podcasts and on Substack and Rock Bottom Redemptions, you know, in the proceeding up to the point where we release the book. We're also going to be doing things after. So what I ask you to do is I ask you to go on Rock Bottom Redemptions and find and subscribe for free. You'll be able to subscribe for free, you know, to the page, and then 2 or 3 times a week you might see a little excerpt from the story, you might see a little video. You know, I recommend that you share that with your friends and family that are going through these problems. I recommend that if you're an addict, you share it, you know, you read it. I know that's difficult for somebody that's going through full-blown, you know, but every once in a while there's a spot in their life where they're trying to get clean and sober. Maybe you share this with them, and hopefully you share the book with them, and just keep loving them until they can learn how to love themselves. So thank you for taking your time today. And if you're an addict watching, please reach out to me. You know, my goal in life is to give back, you know, what I've been given so freely. And that's how I stay clean and sober, you know, and that's how I make amends for the things that I did in my life. So thank you, and then, you know, please stay tuned for more to come.